Thank you, Andre. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the HPE webinar for October 2015. My name is Remus Golgot. I'm a software developer in the Operations Orchestration RnD team. And I will present you today the OO Jenkins plugin and a couple of ways to leverage this tool in DevOps scenarios. The agenda for this presentation is the following. I will start with a short overview over the plugin and what are the main components and products that the plugin interacts with. I will then follow with a brief technical presentation of the plugin and more specifically how you can download and install the plugin in Jenkins, and how to configure the plugin in order to use it. And you will actually find it is very simple, and the cost in time is very reduced. You can actually spend very few minutes and immediately leverage the capabilities of the plugin. After the technical presentation of the plugin, I will present you two use cases which actually are centered in the automated solution area, but they use the plugin as the backbone for each solution. Let's start with the overview now. First, of course, the plugin uses the HPE Operations Orchestration Central as a target for invoking flows. And as you all know by now, HPE Operations Orchestration is a leader in the IT process automation market. And of course, he has the main functionalities to automate common tasks and processes in data centers. The second, let's say, actor in this scenario is the Jenkins continuous integration server. I'm not sure how familiar you are with Jenkins as a tool and its capabilities, but you must know that one of its best features is that you can extend the functionalities of the Jenkins server through customizable plugins. If you're not familiar with Jenkins, during the course of the presentation, you will see what a couple of short scenarios and then more complex scenarios, and you will get an idea of what it is able to do. But for the start, just to mention that there already is Operations Orchestration community content that integrates with the Jenkins continuous integration server, which means that there is a content pack that contains operations and flows that integrate with Jenkins. Some of them permit the user to start a job, get the job status, cancel a job, and so on. So we already have this integration capability from OO to Jenkins, and the Operations Orchestration Jenkins plugin is the tool that integrates the other way around, which means that through Jenkins you are able to invoke operational orchestration flows using this plugin. Now, of course, the fact that the capabilities for integration goes both ways means that you are able to do even more complex scenarios that you would otherwise be fairly limited only using one of the two directions of integration. And as I mentioned earlier, what happens with what the plugin actually does, its main functionality and capability, is to invoke an operational orchestration flow from inside a Jenkins job. This means that when you create a job in Jenkins and you after you configure the job, of course, to use the plugin, and you start the job. Somewhere inside that job will be a portion of the job will invoke an operational orchestration flow on a specific central instance that you configure inside the plugin. If you understood so far this part of the presentation, it will be very easy to understand the next following bits of information. Now, for the technical part of the presentation for the plugin, it will contain how to download the plugin, how to install it in Jenkins, how to perform global and local configurations, and how and where to see the results of using the plugin. Now, starting with download and installation, you can get the plugin from two separate sources, let's say. If you want to use the latest released version, you can go to jenkins-ci.org and you can download it from there. And if you want to get the actual latest version, or if you want to contribute to the plugin, because this plugin is its code is located on GitHub, you can actually contribute to the plugin. It's an open source project. And feel free, if you want to do this, you are free to do it. You can fork the repository if you want, or you can contribute to the actual repository from github.com/jenkins/ci/HPE Operations Orchestration Plugin. And then after you have the plugin, you need to install it, but I will show you these steps outside of the presentation. So first, just to go back to ways to download it, on the Jenkins CI page, just go here to latest release and you will download the file, which is a -HPI extension file. Or if you go to GitHub, you clone the repository, and then you need to perform a Maven clean install, because this is a Maven project. You need to build the project, and the HPI file will be an actual result of building the project. After you have that file, you will go to the Jenkins server, and you will install it like you install any plugin in Jenkins. You just copy the file inside the Jenkins installation folder, the plugins subfolder. You will see here are all the plugins that you use inside Jenkins, the one that are out of the box with Jenkins, and the ones that you want to add on top of Jenkins. In this case, this is the plugin, the HPI file. So you copy it here. And after you copy it, of course, you need to restart the Jenkins server, the service, in order for Jenkins to update its plugin manager with this new plugin. After you restart the service, you will go to the Jenkins URL. Of course, you will connect to Jenkins again, and in the Manage Jenkins section, go to Manage Plugins, and you should be able to see the plugin here after you perform the steps. Now, after you perform all these steps, you are basically ready to use the plugin inside Jenkins. And just a quick look on what you need to do to use the plugin. First, you need to go to the global dashboard inside the configure system Jenkins page, and you need to supply a couple of information to Jenkins that actually customizes some values that the plugin uses. And the most important part here is this section here, the configure HPE Operations Orchestration Server. This section, in this section you can specify multiple central servers that can be targets for the plugin, which means that these are all central instances that presumably are running, so they are available to be targets, and you only need to specify a label for that particular central, the URI, which comprises the protocol, the IP or the host name, the port, and the /PAS extension. And in addition, to provide credentials if they are required, if you have authentication on that center. So this is the way you specify the central instances that are targets for the plugin. And just to show you inside Jenkins, you go again, manage Jenkins, configure system, and you will see here this section. This section is available after you install the plugin. And when you click on show servers, you see here all the servers that you configure. In this on this Jenkins server, I have multiple servers I have configured. You can configure as many as you like. And in addition to this information right here, you can also provide, if it is necessary, trustor and a trustor password for connectivity to the central instance. Now, after this global configuration section is performed, you want to create a job and to use the plugin to see in its simplest form how it works. And in order to do that, of course, you need to create a new job, or you can use an existing job if you want. And again, after you install the plugin, each job will have this section here, the add build step section. This is actually a section that exists even before this section of the plugin. But after you start the plugin, you will get this new option here, HPE Operations Orchestration Flow Execution Build Step. This is the main component of the plugin, which can be attached to any job. And in this component, you specify all the information the job requires and the plugin requires to invoke a particular flow. And this information comprises of, first of all, the operational orchestration server that is the target for the flow execution. Here you have a drop-down list, and you can select from all the centers you have configured in the global configuration section I presented you earlier. So you specify the label of the center you want to have as a target. Again, if you remember, you don't need to remember the actual URL for each center. You only need to know the label of the center you want as target. After that, you need to specify the flow you want to execute on the server. In order to do that, you will supply a value for the base path, and then the plugin will update the value for the drop-down list here, so the list will contain all the flows that are available at that location in the base path. This actually reduces the search time for a particular flow. If you use the refresh button here, you will make the plugin refresh the list if you make changes to the base path. Another option is the step execution timeout, which is the timeout in milliseconds that the plugin will wait for a particular step inside the flow that runs to end. This value enables you to avoid infinite running jobs, which can occur if either the flow behind them is running indefinitely, or if the flow behind them is paused by the user it can be paused inside central, hard paused, or if the flow has a prompt message, again it will pause to wait for a prompt. So this timeout comes in hand to avoid such scenarios. The last part of information you can configure inside the build step is the actual inputs you want the flow to run with. This can be required and non-required inputs, but as a note, if the flow has required inputs, you will need to supply all of the inputs here with values for each input, of course, in order for the flow to run to success and for the job to run to success. Because if the flow has required inputs and you don't supply them, then the actual flow invocation to the API will fail, and you will not see the results you expect. So how you do that? This is just a simple job inside Jenkins. You go to the configure section, and if you scroll down a bit, you will see here the add build step section, and you will choose HPE Operations Orchestration Flow Execution build step. I already added a build step to the job, and let's see. As I mentioned in the slides, all the options you have. Now, in addition to what is presented in the slide, there is also a run name option. You can specify this is the actual run name that will appear in central for the particular flow that is invoked to this build step. This means that, for example, if I say something like this, or run invoked from Jenkins plugin, you will know that in center that particular execution comes from the Jenkins plugin, and it was run as part of some Jenkins job. And again, another feature that I need to mention here is this help bubble. Almost all of the fields have such a help option. You can use it if you want to see more details of how to use a particular value, or how to populate a particular field. Okay, so now that I showed you how to configure a Jenkins job, let's run this job. Okay, this particular job will attempt to run this generate random number flow, which is a flow located in the base content pack. It's a sample flow inside utility operations. And I will attempt to run it on a particular central instance I configured in the global configurations panel section. And these are the inputs I want to provide the flow with. These are required inputs for the flow and their particular values. After you do any changes to the build step, you need to either save or apply the changes. This is a Jenkins feature. Jenkins only updates the job with the new values if you save or apply them. Now I built this job, and we will drill down inside the job and see the console output. This is a way, basically the fastest way to see the console output and the execution of a particular job in Jenkins. Now let's see what the Jenkins console tells us. Most of the information you see here is returned by the plugin. So basically everything from this project name to the execution URL is given as information by the plugin. So you can see here basically the information that the plugin used in order to execute the flow. This contains the label of the central you use as target, the version of the central that is used as target, the flow that ran. This is the name of the location of the flow inside the central, again the center label and the parameters, which are actually the actual inputs that the flow used. These were the ones that you specified in the build step. And you see here with blue, it's the outcome of the execution. We see the return result is 12. In this case, he generated the number 12. And this is basically a very good way to see the outcome of the execution. If you want to see it in Jenkins, you don't want to go to center to see what the outcome of the execution was. But if you want to go to the center, there's no problem. The execution URL is right at the end of the output. This is a link to the run log for the particular execution. This is a JSON that contains all the information that center returned for the particular execution. But you can, if you just remove the end of the URL, you can go to directly go to the center, and we will see here in the run management section, this is the execution that was invoked by the plugin. So if there are a lot of executions here. Let's just make sure that it is the one that the run name that I given. There might be a bit of confusion with all the jobs that ran there, but so this is the run name. OO run invoked from Jenkins plugin. OO run invoked from Jenkins plugin. Completed. You go to the details. This is basically central functionality right now, but you can see again everything. But I wanted just the result, just to show you how quickly you can go from the outcome of the execution to the central server. Now, for most success scenarios, you will not need to do that. Basically, you will see the job is blue, everything is good. But if the job is red, then you want to go to the center to see what happened. And in this particular instance, this is a job that had basically the same idea of generating a number, but the inputs were given, so invalid values were given, basically 21 for min and 20 for max. This is an invalid combination for the operation, and you can go again to center in one click and see that the particular job failed, the particular execution or run failed. So it took me like 5 minutes to configure everything. It's very, very easy to get some. Of course, this is just one of the more simple scenarios that can be made with this plugin. But it's very easy to configure, and once you get the hang of it, there are only those two main configuration sections that are used. I'm not sure if you have any questions until now. You are free to use the chat to submit questions, or maybe at the end of the presentation to give them to us. I will continue the presentation now, and you can ask the questions at the end. I think it's better that way. Now, going more in depth, I will present to you 2 use cases that actually, let's say, they represent some solutions that can be used in production environments or actual more complex solutions that the plugin is able to handle. And you get a better view of what the power of the plugin is after I present you these use cases. But before I do present you the first use case, I need to introduce a notion of matrix, what a matrix is in Jenkins. Basically, a matrix is a Jenkins multi-configuration project. This means that a particular Jenkins job has a collection of smaller jobs, each performing a similar task. And the way the matrix handles and interprets the outcome of the particular job is that if any of the smaller jobs inside the matrix fails, the entire main job will fail. In the context of using the plugin inside the matrix, each job inside the matrix will run a particular flow on a particular central instance with a certain combination of inputs. Now, how this is basically the information, the core information the plugin requires to invoke a particular flow. So to actually work, it needs a server target, it needs the actual flow to invoke, and the inputs the flow will be invoked with. The user has two options to define all three bits of information. You can either use the build step, which is similar to the, let's say, single or simple job scenario, and I already presented to you this a couple of minutes ago. But it has a second option to use the user-defined axes, which are ways to define, actually, to generate the configuration matrix for this type of job. And let's see what that means inside Jenkins. Okay, this is a multi-configuration project, and this also has the configure section here. You can go to the configure section, and in addition to all or most of the sections that you will see in any job, you will see this configuration matrix section. This section allows you to define how the matrix will be generated. And in this scenario here, I'm using two of the three bits of information to generate the matrix. The first one is the flow. Basically, I want to have multiple flows that are invoked inside the matrix. In this example, I have 4 different flows that I want to run. And I'm using this notation here. This is actual notation that needs to be in this form so that the plugin will understand what to do. And I populating the values section with how many flows I want. The second axis of the matrix will be generated using an input. For this particular axis, I have 2 values which represent IP addresses. These are values that will be injected inside each execution for the host input for each of the 4 flows. Now, of course, all of the flows have this input, and because if they will not have the input, it will be added, but it will be redundant. But if, on the other hand, the input is required, you will need to supply the input. So just to elaborate a bit more on how to provide the inputs. This is one of the ways to provide the input in such a scenario using the axis here. Another way, again, is to the build step. You can have, with regards to inputs, you can have a combination of both. You can actually provide the inputs to the axis and through the build step, because as you can see here, 2 of the inputs are provided in the build step. Now, with regard to flows and servers, you cannot do this. So if you supply the flows here, you will not be able to also supply another flow here. The Jenkins plugin will only consider the flows you supply in the axis. If you don't supply the flows in the axis, then the plugin will consider the flow that you supply here. And another bit of information that needs to be said is that the flows here, as you can see, are referenced by name. But the plugin actually knows to interpret or to look for these flows at the particular location you provide at the base path. So in other words, all the flows that you want to run inside the matrix need to be located at the same library location in the library. In this scenario, you see an example where the matrix is generated by flow and by input. But first of all, you can also specify the server labels. So basically, if you do something like this, and you input a list of, let's say, central labels, you will be able to generate the matrix with the two bits of information, which are the flow and the server. If you do it like this, then the plugin will not consider this value that you put here. And again, another thing that you can do is you can add multiple axes. So not only two, you can add more than two axes. You can add another axis if you want. If you want, this is actually a three-dimensional axis, and there will be, let's say, if I have two values here, A1 and A2, these correspond to labels again that I already configured in the global page. Then I will have 16 jobs that run. It will be a three-dimensional matrix. One of the axes will have 4 values, the second will have 2, and the third will have values. So you can grow the complexity very quickly. Another, let's say, kind of obvious thing that needs to be said here: if you cannot add another axis that defines flows and servers, but you can define another axis that defines input. So if I have something like username, I can have user 1, user 2. But again, this is just a theoretical example, because you will not have such thing in a concrete example. An actual concrete example on the original form like this, I think it is very conclusive of what such scenario of, let's say, operating system health checks can look like. You have 4 flows that perform some tasks each on the operating system. Each flow performs a particular kind of task on the memory, the network, or the operating system itself. And you have a particular list of hosts that you want to have them health checked. This is actually the way I think you will most likely define the matrix. But moving a bit further along, there is another feature, which is actually a Jenkins feature, but it comes in hand with the plugin and these axis values. You can actually filter out one or multiple combinations that will be generated. In this particular example here, I'm using a combination filter, and I'm filtering out the Linux health check with this IP. So I don't want this combination to run inside the matrix. And you will see in the matrix, this is actually grayed out. And there isn't even a cell generated for this particular combination. Now that I think I covered everything with regards to how to configure such a multi-configuration project. And let's run such a project. Let's see what happens. Now, if you go to inside the job, just clicking the job and see what happens. You'll see the matrix that was generated with the 2 axes. This is the flow axis and this is the host axis. Each line or column represents a value inside the axis that was run. As you can see, the combination I filtered out is not running. All of the other combinations are running. Some of them will pass, some of them will fail. I think the ones that fail because this particular post is no longer up. But I will drill down to see what the problem actually is. Okay, if you go a bit deeper inside the job itself, so this is the multi-configuration project itself, see that this job actually triggers seven separate jobs. Each of the job has a name that is actually a comma delimited name with the values that were inside the axis, that values that generate each particular job. So each of this is actually a Jenkins job. If I go inside, it is basically a Jenkins job. And again, I can go even deeper inside the job itself, see the output. And in this for this particular combination, we have a problem, which means that the Jenkins job completed execution, the plugin invoked the flow ran on Central. However, the actual flow execution returned a failure outcome. This is not good, but the good part is that we can see the actual error inside Jenkins. So this means that you don't even know to go to Central to see the error. See the error here inside the primary result, but I think it's very, very clear that it's a connection timeout issue. So you need to only scroll down to basically the end of the outcome, the end of the formatted response, and see the fact that it's a connection issue. If you want to go and let's say investigate on Central what happened, again, you can go to Central just for the particular execution itself. You will see that the job failed. Now, I will not do that here because it is quite obvious what the problem is. For a job that went to success, we will see the same thing. If you go inside, you will see the actual execution, output execution. This is the memory health check for a Linux instance, which was a target for the health check execution. And you see here, if you want, again, the primary result, it's very, very easy to find it inside Jenkins. You don't need to go to Central to see it. This is an example of how to use the plugin. Again, very easy. Just make a simple multi-configuration project and you populate two axes, a couple of more fields inside a build step, and you obtain such a job that, as you can imagine, this can grow very large, very quick. If you have 10 flows with, let's say, 7 or 8 instances that you want to health check, this can run as you can schedule it as you like in Jenkins. You can run nightly, you can run in whatever way you like, and you will have 70 jobs that run very, very fast. Each job takes a couple of seconds. In a couple of minutes, everything is done. And another side note, you can have this capability as, of course, if you want, as a downstream project to another job. And this is part of the second use case I will present. Okay, so this is what I mentioned earlier, how it looks in Jenkins console output. The fact that each cell triggers a particular job. You see in Jenkins everything goes to success or failure. You see the corresponding jobs in Central. These are the corresponding jobs and the matrix for the particular execution of the matrix configuration project. Now, going to the second use case, which is a more elaborate use case of how to build a possible automated acceptance testing solution. This will be actually a solution that tests some operations orchestration content packs. And you will see again how you can leverage the Jenkins plugin and the capability of a multi-configuration project in Jenkins to generate a matrix that you can start actually downstream after you perform a commit on a content pack. So the use case will be something like this. You have a job that builds a content pack and you make a change on that content pack. It can be a code change inside a plugin, or it can be an XML change inside the flow. After you perform the change, you do the commit, and the Jenkins job will be triggered by the SVN or the Git change, and it will run. The Jenkins job will run, and let's assume that the commit was good and the job will build successfully. After you build a job, you want to make sure that the tests, or you have some tests that you want to run after each job. You may want to make sure that all the tests are successful. This you can do. You'll create a new job. A downstream project which will be triggered by the completeness of the upstream project. And this downstream project will be a matrix configuration project, which will run certain combinations of the version of the content pack that you built on a couple of, let's say, versions of, in this particular example, it can be something else. In this particular example, versions of Central, so versions of OO, and versions of the operating system that Central is installed on. Now, let's dive a bit deeper. You will need a Jenkins job, which will be a multi-configuration project. You will specify, let's say, 3 or 4 different versions of Central. You will have a couple of versions of the CP you want to test. And each Jenkins job inside each cell will run a flow. One or more flows, but let's say it runs a single flow. It will run that flow on a central instance that is, in this particular scenario, we will call it an automation central instance, which will contain all the flows that you need for automation solution. I will explain you in the following slide what this means. But at this overview level, you have 24 different jobs inside Jenkins that will each run a particular combination of CP version, Central version, and Central operating system. Now, to explain to you what is the purpose and what does each cell perform inside this matrix. First of all, this is just an example of what and how to build an automated acceptance testing solution. But for this particular scenario, we will start by downloading the OO installer, the content pack that we want to test, and the corresponding test content pack. The test content pack contains a couple of flows that use operations or flows from inside the content pack and just have a particular, let's say, tests or scenarios that they validate. In order to perform this, so the download of these 3 artifacts, you can use, and this solution, let's say, uses the HTTP client content inside the base content pack. The second bit of work that each cell does is after the download is performed, of course, it silently installs the Central and it deploys the content pack and the test content pack. All these steps can be performed using remote command execution. The operation inside base content pack. After the Central is installed and the CPs are deployed, we want to run the test flows. To actually run the test flows. This can be done in 2 ways. but each of the ways uses out-of-the-box content. Either HTTP client post, which is targeted against the OO API, or more simply, you can use dynamically launched flow, which is a flow inside HPE Solutions content pack, and you will not need to actually integrate with the API. This flow integrates itself with the API, and it will be easier for you to use it like this. The final part of execution for each cell, after the test flow runs, you will need or you will want to have some sort of report of the actual outcome of the execution of those tests. The hard way would be to go inside the automation central machine where the test flow ran, and see all the outcomes for all the tests. But that can be a very, very time-consuming task. So another option is to create content so basically operations and flows that are capable of generating reports for particular executions of flows. And in this solution, the acceptance testing solution, there are such reports that calculate the status and the coverage. Status represents whether or not a particular test passed or failed. And the coverage report, which is presented to you in the right side of the screen, will cover for that particular content pack all the operations and flows inside the content pack, whether they are covered or not. These operations basically will generate the report, will manipulate the JSON that is returned by the API. And this can be made in HTML, for example, as a possible output format. Now, to bring all these things together, each of the 4 steps I presented you here corresponds to an execution of an OO flow, which means that each cell will need to execute 4 OO flows. This can be done through the plugin if you add multiple build steps, because you can add as many build steps as you want. A Jenkins job will run each build step one at a time, which means that it will start by executing the first build step, and after that build step is finished, it will continue with the second build step, if that exists, and so on. And it will continue until all the build steps are invoked. Okay, so you can perform such, let's say, more complex or even more complex solutions inside a single cell, inside a single bit of a job inside Jenkins can actually encapsulate a lot of functionality. It can encapsulate a very complex scenario, each single cell inside the matrix. Now, to demo this solution, I will go to the actual Jenkins server that we use inside the team. We have this content pack, operating systems content pack. This is actual, not out-of-the-box content pack. It has multiple versions. It has the CP itself. So this is the job that builds the CP. This is the job that contains the tests. This builds the test content pack. And this is the job that represents the matrix. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning of presenting this use case, this is a downstream project for operating system CP, which means after each operating system CP job is finished, it will trigger such a job, operating systems bat matrix. Now, there are a couple of, as you can see here, this is not the most stable job in the world to have, but we'll go to a particular execution of the job that was successful. this this particular execution, as you can see here, ran for two different central instances. Both were 1050 instances, but one of them was on Red Hat, the other one was on Windows. And both of them ran for the 1.3 snapshot version of the CPU, let's say. But it can be, this is just for this example. Okay, now before I go to the actual results, now I hope that I can show you the configurations. Okay, 4 times was lucky. This is a different Jenkins. There are some permission restrictions, but nevertheless I managed to log in. Let's see how the configurations look like. We have different axes, but the plugin itself will use this user-defined axis, which will inject this CP version input inside the flow with these 4 values. Each row of cells will have a particular value. And the second axis is it can be generated to this in this kind of way. To the slaves slave section, you see here the values for all the central servers can be used as target. For this particular matrix, we choose only the first 6, which correspond to the latest 3 versions of Central and 2 operating systems, Red Hat and Windows. There are a couple of others, but we don't want them in this particular scenario. Now, again, if you go deeper to the build step itself, we see the information that is needed. This is the build step. Contains all the information you need to configure the job with, the central server that is the actual automation central that has these flows and is the target for the Jenkins plugin, and which will run all the particular automation flows that I mentioned earlier. So the ones that perform the down installation content, the ones that install the content, deploy the content packs, and run the test flows. This is actually this is the BAT flow, which is located in library CDP BAT, which is the flow that performs the entire work. We have again some run name and some timeout value, and these are all the inputs for the particular flow. Now in this scenario, I only have this flow, the BAT flow, but this flow does all the work that I showed you in the slides. This is not the best way to do it, actually. I think the best way will have to have multiple build steps that run. Because, yeah, you have more modularity and it's easier to follow like that. Instead of having a single flow that does everything, you can close each inside the build step, and it will be easier to follow. And of course, you can reuse the flows in different solutions if you have this better way of doing things. Okay, now going back to the actual execution, this execution of the matrix. If you go inside the particular one of the two jobs that run, you see here actually the build artifacts. These some of them are copied to Jenkins here. These files here, from general log up to wrapper.log, but the first four will be copied by the automation execution. So one of the steps inside that flow is actually copying the coverage report and the status report and the execution log. It copies these reports inside the Jenkins Jenkins server at a particular location, so that Jenkins will be able to see those files and actually show them here, because these are actually files that are located inside the Jenkins server on the file system at a particular location. But how easy is to see? Just go to the matrix job, just inside the job, and you have these reports here at the palm of your hands. Just you only need to do 2 clicks and you have the reports here. And this is a great way to see the outcome of the execution. You will not be able to do debugging, of course, because you only see here if the flow failed or not, or if the flow is covered or not. If you want to see the actual problem, if you have, let's say, if you have one of the operations or flows that was tested failed, and it was an unexpected failure, and the execution report actually has this failure inside the report. You want to see why and what the error is. You go to the console output, and because the Jenkins plugin has the capability of outputting the run log from inside Jenkins, you have the entire execution here. Just this actually is the entire execution for the flow. And you can do some sort of debugging like this, or again you can go to the execution URL if you want.
Remus, this is Andre. Sorry to interrupt. We missed a little bit over time, so I would like to request you, if possible, to conclude. There are some questions in the room. Maybe we can stick to that because some people might. Okay.
The presentation is over. This was the last part I wanted to show you. So basically, this concludes the second use case, presentation of the second use case.
Okay.
And now,
great.
Going to the questions. They are in the chat room, or where?
There are 2 questions in the questions area.
3 actually, I see. Oh, 2, okay. From where to fetch the values for test server IP?
I think Dan already answered that one if you expanded, so I think that one is answered.
Let's see.
Yes, hello, yes, I already asked.
I'm not sure what this test IP is, but I'm sure that Dan provided the correct answer. And if Anand, if you want to go, if you want to add something to the answer, if you are clear.
Hi, I just wanted to know the variable which you have created, test server.ip. It will fetch some values. So as per Dan, it will, there is an script before the overflow that runs that output this variable into the properties file.
Yes, that is correct. We have an unscript. We have an unscript that installs central, and when it finishes installing central, it outputs the IP and the port into a property file, and that property file is injected back into the build system, and then we have access to that variable to input it in the plugin as a variable and not as a hard-coded version.
Okay, so one more question I have. If I want to test some flows, using Jenkins virtually, so where do I provide the information, like the data center, the vCenter information, which usually comes from CSA end?
I didn't understand the question. Can you please repeat?
No, I also didn't understand.
Yeah, the question here is, CSA being the front end for the end user, I'll be passing some values, through the property names and all from the CSA end. So I wanted to understand how it is possible, using Jenkins, if I want to test this virtually without passing those parameters from CSA end.
Okay, so this plugin interacts with OO directly. So if you want to run CSA flows, I think you can, but
any flows can be evoked.
Yeah.
You only need to have those flows deployed in that particular center instance. But the actual power of the plugin comes through Jenkins. So you are inside Jenkins and you want to perform some automation or some scenarios that can be, let's say, part of the build or part of the continuous integration. If you want to go to CSA, so CSA has, let's say, you want to evoke all flows through CSA or CSA flows through Jenkins. So which one of the two you are referring to?
So let me make it straight, So like I want to execute like vCenter compute. I want to deploy one VM in a vCenter environment. Okay, my provider is vCenter, and I want to execute those flow using a Jenkins. So at least I need to provide some values to overflow, right? Like the data center and the vCenter information and all. How do I do that?
Yes, yes, you can do this. You need to just go to Jenkins job that you want to have this mapping, and you will configure the build step with the values that you want. If you want the values to be customizable or you want to inject them through another means, where do you want to take the values from?
The values I want to pass it through Jenkins, because I don't want CSA to come into the picture. Say for an example, I am a OO developer. I developed some flow. I want to test it end to end, where some custom values will be provided. You got it? What I mean to say?
Yeah, I think I understand. So,
like
this is actually your entire problem or the scenario you want to build comes down to the question whether Jenkins is capable of populating such fields with the values that you take from, let's say, a configuration or property files.
Correct. So I want to exclude CSA here. Being an OO developer, I've created some flow, and I want to test it, for all the customers with different requirement and all.
Well, okay, understand.
Which usually I pass it through CSA, creating some properties name, which is the same name which I create in the OO field for any, step.
From what I know, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, Jenkins is capable of defining such mechanisms and, let's say, functionalities. And it's just a matter of getting the knowledge to do this and the know-how to do this. But the actual Jenkins plugin, you will be capable of doing it.
Well, basically, the CSA flow that, let's say, deploys a new machine on a data center is basically a flow. It's basically a flow. It has some required input. If you specify those required inputs inside the Jenkins job, then yes, you could theoretically and practically run that flow from Jenkins and not from CSA. So you can deploy a new machine from Jenkins and not from CSA.
Yeah, the reason I asked you this, because the developer, I cannot be the developer on the both sides, like CSS service design and overflow. So I don't want to have any dependency with CSA. I want to test end to end using some virtualized tool and all, which I see that Jenkins can play a role in. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Anand, for
My
the question. Second question: how have you created a variable in O? Again, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, that's me. I got the answer. That is created in the answer.
Okay. Okay. Now, regarding the third question, can we compile OCP from repository without Studio? Actually, any content pack is let's say buildable with the Maven. So you just need to perform Maven clean install on the content pack itself, and it will build a content pack and create the artifact. You don't need Studio to build a content pack, but if you want to compile the content pack, which means that you want to see if it has some, this is what I'm thinking that Stanimir wants to ask, if he has some red flows or content that is not following best practice or something like that. And
the point, sorry to interrupt you, the point of my question is when we are working on a big project with different OO studios directly on some repository, like SVN for instance, we are committing our code through the studio. But usually there's some person on duty that is compiling the content pack once a day, daily, and installing that content pack on the central and doing some tests. So if we need to automate that, for instance, on the commit through the trigger in the SCM, we can start a Jenkins and do some test and compilation before that and test automatically. So I wasn't aware if it's so simple to use Maven compilation. And okay, I see. Thank you.
Yes, yes, it can be done if you want. Maybe Dan, you can elaborate on it, but basically,
well,
yes,
with Maven, with Maven, almost everything is possible. It depends on what is your logic. So before you start doing or thinking something, you need to have a plan. You need to put on paper what is the logical steps. What do you want the build system to do? And then you can try to figure out how to configure that logic. But it is possible. I tried with Maven different things and I made it possible. It's not pretty, but it's possible.
In the context of this question, I think the most important part is that after the Jenkins job that builds the CP, you can have a secondary job that is triggered from the first job, and you will have that job invoke the tests you have on the CP. So this can be done with the plugin, basically.
Yeah.
And
Also, you can use the same. You can use
this
the
is
plugin.
similar with the second scenario we presented.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, done.
Is there any page that describing how to create a OO content pack from the repository?
I think the SDK. No SDK document.
SDK. You have documentation inside the Operation Orchestration installation folder. There's a docs folder which contains several documents. I think the one that you need is the Action Developer Guide and the SDK guide. Some combination of the two. But
If not,
you can try with the documentation, and if you don't succeed, you can also just ask one of us actually.
On the
Yeah.
HPLN
Thank you.
on the HPLN overview page, if you go on our operations orchestration page, from the overview page, you can simply download the SDK itself or access the Action Developers Guide that Remus was just mentioning. So you can simply go there to access those files.
and
Thank
if
you.
you have
Thank
any
you.
problems, you can always contact us via email offline, and we can schedule a separate call, and we can help you.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions, guys? If not, I want to thank Remus for the call. Thank Dan as well. Thank you all for joining. Just remind you that the materials and the recording itself will be made available in our webinar page in HPLN. We'll see each other in 1 month, and I guess this is it for today. Take care and see you in 1 month. Thank you very much again.
Thank